Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. Bill Pucko, happy to be with you. The guys, as usual, Tariq Spence in his pink shirt.
I love the fact that we're in summer. We get to break out our bright shirts.
Yes, and Pat Duffy, WCMF. You know, it occurred to me, like, I'm always giving Tariq a formal introduction.
Yeah.
I go to you, what are you wearing?
No, it's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But I'll tell you what I'm wearing anyway. You know, with the Celtics now in the finals, the Big Shamrock Shaq one season Boston Celtics jersey.
The Big Shamrock.
Did that result in a championship?
No, it did not.
Oh.
No, it didn't. I'm not a Celtics fan, although I felt like a champion finding this. I got this in Boston while he was there, while I was on the road. It took me going to 5 different places. It took me like 7 hours in a day, but I came home with this jersey.
That was his last stop, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And they're so happy that you bought it, too.
I'm like the only one, me and Shaq.
So speaking of Boston, as we record this, it isn't official yet, but I'm assuming because teams that go down 0-3 or 0-155 in the NBA playoffs, that we've got a Dallas-Boston NBA final to talk about, and it's a fascinating pairing.
I love it. Just the backstory on it. I get everybody's going to be on sort of watching Luka hopefully get a championship. But does anybody look?
Hopefully, is that like?
Well, we'll wait and see what happens.
What happened to
he's not
objectivity?
100%. Well, he's not 100%. Everybody knows it. That knee, that ankle, and all that other stuff that goes along with it. That being said, the Kyrie Irving story in this is the only thing that interests me. I said it before. I said it last week for Boston. I don't want to hear any excuses. This is your championship to go get. You look amazing against the Pacers. You look well rested. Obviously, you're waiting there for whoever it might be. The Timberwolves, it looks like it's not going to be them. It's going to be the Mavericks. But at any rate, this is going to be a great story because that was like a cup of coffee he had in Boston, and it went awry.
I mean, I would say it was more like a cup of coffee, man. He was a legitimate piece of that team for 2-3 years, right? I mean, he was. Like, he gave a speech saying he was going to retire as a Boston Celtic.
Well, you don't build up that kind of hatred in a cup of coffee. That was 2 years.
He stepped on Lucky's face.
But it's not even remembered. I mean, you go back to the Nets series, the Nets sort of fiasco before you even go there.
I think you are underestimating the pettiness of Boston fans, period.
Thank you.
I mean, and by the way, you know how much I hate everyone in Boston. That being said, I mean, look, I think it's well-deserved. I think what the hate for Kyrie Irving is well-deserved. You come in, you promise the world, you say you're going to retire there, you bail, you then for some reason decide to make it personal, and we all know the history of Boston fans with stuff like that, but, I mean, it was an unforced error on Kyrie's part. How this series ends against Boston for Kyrie Irving will determine his legacy forever. If he does not win this championship, he becomes a footnote and a Robin to LeBron's Batman. If he does win a championship this season, he has now vanquished a second team that told him, we don't need you anymore. We don't want you anymore. You're too much of a liability. And he will have been what? He's undefeated in closeout. Well, no, excuse me. Not after the other night. Go on, I'm rambling. I'm sorry.
But I think all the pressure's on the green team. All the pressure.
Yes.
Because of what you said. And because this has just been so hard. You know, it's been a gradual progression for the team that started when Kyrie was there, who played with Brown and Tatum. That's where it all began. And it's been a steady kind of progression. Man, if they don't finish it, I don't know what they do next.
I'll give you a second note. Porzingis going against the Mavericks. I mean, that's going to be sort of a second line here. Remember, he has not played in these playoffs due to injury. So we'll wait and see what the finals. And he has gotten a lot of time to rest.
I think Boston could beat Dallas without Porzingis. I think they could lose to Dallas with Porzingis. Yeah. The series could go either way, and the only thing I really feel is like Boston's going to win 2 of these games by 20 or more points. Otherwise, everything's on the table.
I'm actually concerned about Porzingis coming back with the rotation that they have and the way that they play. Now, remember, you're taking on a West Coast team. It looks like it's going to be the Mavericks, but the West Coast teams that might be beaten up a little bit themselves. It's turned into this sort of war of attrition. So it's going to be interesting with Porzingis back in, how that rotation will work, because the rotation they have right now with the way Jaylen Brown is playing, Tatum, I mean, my goodness, with White, they look unbeatable.
Yeah. It's such a depth. I mean, watching Dallas, that's it, the complementary pieces to those other 2 guys, you can't depend on any of them.
And that's just it, right? Like, what you've been seeing all playoffs long is that experience has been beating talent every single series. I think Boston's more talented. Boston has way more playoff experience. I mean, this is old hat for them, right? You were supposed to be in the finals compared to, I mean, Dallas has a couple of nice runs in the past, but outside of Kyrie, again, having someone to play with, he doesn't go deep. Like, I think Boston, you're right, it's theirs to win. I think they do win this thing. And I think Boston might be more dominant than you want to believe.
You kind of, yeah, I think people have been inventing narratives, but
I just invented that one. How was that?
Not bad.
Okay, thank you.
Not bad.
Thank you.
Nothing you do is really bad.
Obviously.
This is Rochester Press Box. We're talking Buffalo Bills next.
Except buying that jersey.
Just Passing Through, life lessons from notable Rochesterians, people you may think you know. Don Alhart, Maggie Brooks, John Dady, and Stacy Pension, J-Mac and Soccer Sam, Fred Costello, and Jake Zembeck, along with 21 more. How they all got from there to here. It's a new book by Bill Pucko, available for $12 postpaid only from rocksportsnow.com. Try it, and thank you. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. Time to talk Buffalo Bills. We finally got a little clarity on the Stefon Diggs deal.
Did we? I mean, look.
I felt so. I mean, Brandon Beane comes out here and it says we had to get rid of this albatross of a contract.
And he's right. And look, I can also take it's refreshing. He signed him to that contract.
I know.
Right? So he's essentially saying, but I don't see
He's so upfront with the things that he says. I mean, the candidacy you get out of Brandon Beane is not NFL-like.
Okay, I will say this, being completely cynical. You know he's giving you candid there, so you buy the other BS that he's going to sell you down the road to other things, right? That being said, look, he's right.
Most of these guys are all BS.
But look, he's right. I mean, if Stefon Diggs was still producing to a level where they expected him to at this point, I don't think the contract is an albatross, right? I would compare it to the contract that Jeff Skinner signed with the Sabres a couple of years ago. It was the worst contract ever for the longest time, and all of a sudden he started producing again, and he was a value as things go up and down. Yeah, you had to get rid of it. And the way you hear him explain it now, it makes perfect sense why the Bills did what they did this season.
I mean, you throw in the fact Joe Brady is basically saying this is Josh Allen's offense. That gives me more concern that you're putting even more on Allen than you did before, that you took away the receiver that you thought was going to be an issue in the contract and the money going forward, which you could have done maybe sooner and spread that over the next couple of seasons. That being said, I mean, it almost as if you need to pay Allen more money now because you're basically asking him to now find a reason to play better given less talent on the roster.
I think that they're going to be leaning more into the run game. That was the success they had in the last 7-8 games of the season last year. They let James Cook do more, and James Cook went out and he cooked for them. I mean, he had a couple of drops as well as Diggs having a couple of drops. I think you're going to see a more balanced offense, not Josh Allen working more, trusting not only James Cook, but the rookie running back they took in the
It backs up my contention that 2025 is the key year. I mean, he doesn't want to compromise 25 and 26 by keeping that contract around, so he's taking a hit in 24 for it.
But that's the argument they made the last 2 years for the Chiefs, right? Look what happened there. I don't think...
but I think strategically those opinions were right. Kansas City just overcame them. They were good enough, which is to say Buffalo could do the same thing in 2024.
Look, I mean, I get where you're coming from with that, but there was a statement you made a couple weeks ago when this came up that makes me disagree with that idea, right? The fact that Josh Allen is still young and blah, 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 blah. You can never, and I'll say it again as I knock on wood, you can't take any year with Josh Allen for granted the way that he plays ball, and you can't take any year with any quarterback for granted the way they play ball. Robert Griffin III was going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. The guy had one great season, got hurt, and ends up being a backup.
It sounds like they're taking this season for granted for that next season to make that next leap to go get your big wide receiver in 2025.
I see. I don't think, yes, I think the plan is to go get a wide receiver from somewhere, whether it's the draft or free agency. I don't think it's taking this year for granted. I think they legitimately believe with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, the tight ends there, and the weapons they have on offense with the running game, that they can win this division and go deep into the play.
He's like, pushing up to 27, which is prime. He's no longer the young quarterback. He's a quarterback in his prime.
Yeah, no, he's 28 this season. Right, no, you're right. He is in his prime, which I think is another reason why the Bills said, let's go do something. Let's go see what you can do here. It's your team. Go.
So you guys, after the fact, on board with trading Stefon Diggs?
I am still not on board with that because you really haven't put anybody in his place yet, but it looks like they're going to roll the dice.
And you?
The way that Beane speaks, like you said, the headache wasn't worth what the check was versus the production. I think he had no choice.
We'll see what that's like in week 7.
I love that he offered that up, though, calling it an albatross of a contract and then doing what he did. It was fascinating. I love hearing that guy speak. This is the Rochester Press Box. That was our Buffalo Bills segment. Like it or not is next. Here's the Press Box trivia question brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road.
thank you, American architect Frank Lloyd Wright, and this amazing getaway to Grey Cliff. Hello again, Mike O'Brien, your getaway guy. I'll take you on the tour. Just look for the getaway guy right now on Facebook.
Here's the Press Box Trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box, and our Like It or Not segment is brought to you by Ralph Honda, where Honda is done right. Online or in their showroom, build your new Honda, get financing, and a quote on your trade. For your next Honda, visit Ralph Honda. Like it or not, a contention of mine about hockey players is that they have great respect for the game of hockey and, as a result, each other. Mm-hmm. I mean, you kind of see it in the lines from the end of these series and the like, and yet there's always, should this guy be suspended for this? They don't seem to treat each other well.
No, I get what you're saying. You have the issue with former Buffalo Sabre Evan Rodriguez catching a flying elbow headed into the goal. You had what happened with Brad Marchand taking a sucker punch the series before this. I mean, there have been some issues this NHL playoffs. There's been issues every NHL playoffs. I guess I compare it to the mob. Right? Where you have this overarching respect for with which you play inside. You have respect for each other because you all know how dangerous you can be and the lifestyle that you're living and what the goal you're trying to accomplish, right? But if you're in the way of me trying to accomplish that, I'm going to use any means necessary to make sure I accomplish my goal and you
Doesn't that make the sport a draw? Because that's what draws me into it. The fact that there's some sort of violence that is sort of over the line, but then again is sort of policed by the players.
Well, you know, it's funny you bring that up, like violence is over the line and not over the line. The violence is determined to be over the line based on how much you like that player that committed that act. And I'm being completely sincere, right? Like, I mean, and I'll admit that I'm guilty of this too, right? Like, it's hard for me to find fault in what a lot of Buffalo Sabres have done throughout the history of that franchise, but you go near any of my guys, well, yeah, I'm going to be upset about it.
And I guess, you know, that this kind of thing is like, is it like replaced or a result of a de-escalation in the fighting?
But it's almost as if the fact that something like that takes place, a guy gets a hockey stick over his head or gets pushed in the boards a little bit too hard. It's almost as if like, okay, you guys aren't going to call it. Like in baseball, they go crazy. You're not going to call it. This is just the way it is. We'll deal with it later. And in baseball, you don't really get that. In baseball, you might get a retaliation the next day. A guy might get hit. But in hockey, it's going to be handled.
Yeah, but I don't know, not as much as it used to be. To your point about the fights not being there anymore, I don't like that argument, right? Because the fights are getting just as violent. And although the injuries are unfortunate, it can cost guys money. I mean, we've seen with guys like Bob Probert and other fighters, right, the damage that can be done to a human brain when you're taking those shots over and over again. It's an imperfect science. I mean, the way to fix it would be to call the games tight, whether it's playoffs, regular season, whatever thing.
No one wants that.
Okay, well then what do you want then?
Sport, I know.
What do you want?
Yeah.
I know. A little more respect.
I like the sport the way it is.
Like it or not, Angel Hernandez retired.
Oh, well, I know a lot of Major League a lot of Major League Baseball players, managers say it was far too, what took so long. That being said, I've never heard of a guy have these legendary moments of kicking Hall of Fame football players out of games. Ian Kinsler went on a tirade expecting, Major League Baseball player Ian Kinsler, expecting to be suspended for the way he went at Hernandez, basically saying, no one likes you. We don't want you to be in the sport anymore. We don't know what your problem is. You need to get out of the sport. I've never seen someone get everyone so upset for the way they called Major League Baseball games. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, we talk about robo-umps and all the rest of the stuff. Why doesn't MLB have why can't they get rid of these guys?
It's a great question. I don't know.
He wasn't even the graded worst umpire. There's apparently worse umpires still working baseball.
Does he make like really good cupcakes or something? I don't know. Like, I'm with you. And here's the thing: he's abrasive too. It's not even like he's a guy you could look at and be like, oh, okay. Like everybody hates that guy, not just because of his calls, but the way he treats players afterwards.
And it's almost become a part of the broadcast because you would actually hear broadcasters say, "Oh, Angel Hernandez, you know how he's going to get. Oh, this is going to get injured." He became a part of the show.
Yeah. And if you know the name of the umpire, there's an issue. Joe West, Angel Hernandez. These guys are like targets.
You're right.
This is Rochester Press Box. Like it or not, brought to you by Ralph Honda. Unfinished Business is next.
The Press Box Stat of the Week is being brought to you by McArdle's Restaurant in Fairport. Come home to McArdle's.
And now to Eichel. He floated one. Score!
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us here in the Rochester Press Box, our favorite segment, Unfinished Business. Pat starts.
Talk about a happy exit. I'd be wearing my Denver Elephants Negro League hat this morning. It's been decided by Major League Baseball that the Negro League records will now assimilate themselves, if I'm using that word the right way, into regular Major League Baseball records. So what is there, and whether you played in the Negro Leagues or in Major League Baseball, you stand where you stand. For example, Josh Gibson now owns the Major League Baseball record for batting average and slugging percentage, taking it away from Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth. And some people are furious at this idea. Now, I understand there's nuances to be had, and this isn't a discussion for a 45-second soliloquy for me, but I will ask you this question. If you are furious about what happened with Josh Gibson, how are you okay with Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth owning those records when in reality they weren't actually playing against the best baseball players in the world, right? If your argument is you're taking a record away from a man that earned it, my argument back is they didn't earn it. Now, it wasn't their fault. It wasn't a fault of their own. They didn't have control over who they were able to play against, but it also wasn't Josh Gibson's fault or Satchel Paige's fault or a number of other Negro League players' fault that they weren't able to play in Major League Baseball. If you're upset about how this changed, it just shines a light on how unbelievably unfortunate it was to be, and I use that as the understatement of the century, a black Latino baseball player before Jackie Robinson. And maybe, just maybe, it gives you the ability to go back and see how remarkable these Negro League baseball players actually were.
The sad part about this, as it's being aired right now, it looks like it's going to be Boston and the Dallas Mavericks going at it in the NBA Finals, which means, unfortunately, no Anthony Edwards. And how could the NBA have possibly gotten anything better out of Anthony Edwards other than his basketball play than basically the entertainment that he provided on the court? Literally doing everything he could to get his team to the NBA Finals, and yet entertainingly doing it the whole time. Anthony Edwards is the big winner in this NBA playoffs because he's the kind of guy that you kind of want to watch and see if he can actually go out there and do what he said he's going to do. Extremely play well, force a game 6, that smile, that fun. He is having so much fun playing basketball. It's making me reminisce about the good old days where guys really went out there, just played the game. They brought no other politics to it. This is all about entertainment. Anthony Edwards has done a great job of marketing not only himself, but the game for pure fun and smiles. Now, will he get to the NBA Finals sometime in his career? I hope so, because Anthony Edwards is turning into must-see NBA on and off the court.
There's a photograph of Bill Walton hung on the walls of the tightest tavern in Irondequoit. There has to be a story attached, because everyone who came in contact with a 6'11" giant of a man who passed away last week at the age of 71 came away with the story. Walton first appeared on our radar in 1970 for his basketball abilities. He won his last 44 games in high school, his last 88 games in college, won 2 national championships, 2 NBA crowns, a league MVP, a finals MVP, and was the 6th man of the year in his next to last professional season, and a Hall of Famer, obviously. But among the week's many tributes, few had much to do with basketball. Walton's was a life of comebacks and reinventions. He first hurt his knees playing playground ball and claims that he peaked as a 12-year-old. He overcame a stuttering problem in his 30s, went on to become a legendary, somewhat unorthodox broadcaster and public speaker. Said Walton once, "If you think you're too small to make a difference, you never spend a night in bed with a mosquito." He contemplated suicide while suffering under the agony of constant back pain. In 2009, spinal fusion surgery brought him back to life, and he spent the last 15 years here making good on that second chance, befriending everyone he met, signing every autograph, shaking every hand. He called himself the luckiest man in the world. When Walton texted friends, he always ended the same way: "Thank you for my life." A simple way of stating that thank you for the contributions you made to my existence. And he was called an amazing human with an incredibly generous soul, a nonconformist in the most positive of ways, always seeking to make the world better for others. And from his idol, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
he was the best of us. It's tough to beat that. And that is our unfinished business, and that is our show.
Is that true about seeing the Grateful Dead over 1,000 times?
1,000 times, and he brought everybody to those concerts.
And here's the weirdest part. Despite the fact that Bill Walton saw the Dead 1,000 times, he only heard 7 songs.
Really?
It's true.
How do you like something that much? It's really pretty amazing.
Hey, we're glad to be here for you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week with the Rochester Press Box.
You want me to make fun of the Grateful Dead and then go see my friends after this? No.